He said he wanted more than love, more than me. I watched him walk away, hand in hand with the woman whose smile was worth millions. They looked like perfection, until you looked closer. Because what glitters isn't always gold. Sometimes it's guilt, shining in the dark. He thought I'd break, that I'd fade quietly into the background. But grief has a strange way of teaching you how to build. And I built something he could never buy: power, peace, and a name. Now, years later, when he looks at me, he doesn't see the girl he left. He sees the life he'll never touch again. But before I continue, make sure you're subscribed to the Hard Revenge channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. We love to see how far our stories travel. The rain tapped softly against the cafe window the first day I met him. He smiled in a way that made the whole world fade for a second, the kind of smile that convinces you you're safe, even when you're standing on the edge of a cliff. We talked for hours about dreams, plans, and how love could fix everything that was broken in us. I remember how his hand felt, warm, steady, full of promises I never asked for but believed anyway. Nights turned into months, and soon he became the reason I woke up smiling. Everything felt real, too real, like the calm before a storm that hadn't yet decided to arrive. But looking back now, I wonder, was it ever love? Or just the first layer of a carefully built lie? We built our world together. Small apartment, cheap dinners, laughter echoing through the walls. But slowly I started noticing things that didn't fit the picture anymore. His phone turned silent when I entered the room. His eyes, once full of warmth, now carried something colder, a calculation. He started talking about people who make real money, how we deserve more than this. I'd nod quietly, trying not to show how much that hurt. I wanted him to dream with me, not away from me. Then one night, he came home wearing a new watch, gold, heavy, expensive. When I asked where it came from, he only smiled and said, "A gift." But from whom? Her name was whispered before I ever saw her. At his office party, everyone seemed to orbit around one woman, elegant, flawless, every inch of her shining like money itself. Her laughter filled the room like music. And when she looked at him, something inside me twisted. He introduced us quickly, too quickly, his eyes avoiding mine. She smiled politely, but there was something in her gaze, a knowing smirk, like she already owned what I was still holding on to. That night, he held me a little less tightly. I could smell her perfume on his shirt, faint but undeniable. I stared into the darkness beside him, wondering, how long before she replaced me completely? At first, it was small things. Missed calls, late replies, dinners that turned cold waiting on the table. He said work was getting intense, but his eyes told another story, one that didn't include me anymore. I'd wake up to an empty bed and the faint smell of cologne that wasn't his usual one. My heart started memorizing silence, learning how to breathe in the spaces he no longer filled. One evening, I asked softly, "Are you happy?" He didn't answer. He just looked away, pretending to check his phone. That night, I lay awake wondering. When did love start feeling like being alone in a crowded room? Days turned into weeks, and the man I loved became a stranger wearing his face. He'd talk about luxury cars, big houses, vacations to places neither of us could afford, dreams that suddenly sounded less like ours and more like hers. I'd find traces, a lipstick stain on a glass in his car, a message half deleted, perfume lingering on his jacket. Once I confronted him, trembling but calm. "Who is she?" I whispered. He laughed, not cruelly, but coldly. "You're imagining things. You always do." And in that moment, I realized the truth. It's easy to lie when the other person still hopes you won't. Still, I needed proof, because deep down, Hope was the only thing keeping me from breaking. It happened one rainy night. His phone buzzed while he was in the shower. I shouldn't have looked, but my shaking hands moved before my heart could stop them. The message glowed on the screen. Dinner was lovely. Can't wait to see you again. My breath caught. My chest felt heavy, like the air itself had betrayed me. When he stepped out, I didn't say a word. I just stared at him, towel around his neck, smiling like nothing was wrong. He kissed my forehead and said, "You worry too much." As the door closed behind him, the silence screamed louder than his lies. I sat there with his phone still in my hand, wondering. Was that the night he chose her over me? The next morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. Every word he said felt rehearsed, every glance, a lie waiting to be told. The air between us was thick, sharp, full of things unsaid. He sat across the table, sipping coffee, scrolling through his phone as if my silence didn't exist. Finally, I whispered, "Who is she?" His hand froze. For a second, his face softened. Guilt flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by cold defense. "You're being dramatic again," he muttered. "You always twist things." But I wasn't twisting anything. I'd already seen the message. I'd already smelled the perfume. And the saddest part wasn't the lie. It was how easily he told it. Somewhere deep inside, I realized the man I loved no longer existed. That evening, we fought, not with shouting, but with silence sharp enough to draw blood. He said things that shattered something inside me. "You never wanted more. You're comfortable being small. She pushes me." Those words echoed in my head like thunder. Small, comfortable, not enough. I wanted to scream, to make him remember the nights we dreamed together when money didn't matter, when love was enough. But he was already gone, lost in a world I couldn't follow. When he left that night, the sound of the door closing felt final, like the end of a chapter I wasn't ready to finish. Was this love? Or had it turned into something crueler? He came home late the next day, dressed too well for someone who'd been at work. His cologne hit me before his voice did. I stood by the window, calm but breaking inside. "So, this is it?" I asked quietly. He didn't argue, didn't even look sorry. He just said, "You'll understand one day. She can give me what you can't." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because pain sometimes sounds like madness when it finally escapes. He turned away, his footsteps fading down the hall like an echo of everything we'd been. When the door closed, the house didn't just fall silent. It emptied. And as tears blurred my reflection in the window, I whispered to the night, "You'll regret this." But part of me wondered, was that a promise or a prayer? The first morning without him felt wrong, the kind of wrong that seeps into your bones. His side of the bed was cold, untouched, yet it still carried the shape of his absence. The walls, once filled with laughter, now echoed with memories that refused to fade. I made coffee, but it tasted like nothing. The radio played a love song I couldn't bear to hear. I caught myself waiting for the sound of his keys, the familiar click of the door. But it never came. Instead, there was only the hum of silence, heavy and cruel. I looked at our framed photo on the table, us smiling at a life that no longer existed. And that's when I realized, heartbreak doesn't kill you. It just lets you live like a ghost. Days blurred together. I stopped going to work, stopped answering calls. The world outside kept moving, buses, people, laughter. But mine had frozen in place. Friends tried to help, offering kind words and pity, but pity was poison. I didn't want comfort. I wanted justice. One afternoon, my boss called me into his office. He said, "You've been distracted, unreliable, maybe take a break." I nodded, though it felt like one more thing he had taken from me. My love, my peace, and now my stability. I walked out of the office into the cold rain without an umbrella. It soaked through my clothes, but I didn't care. For the first time, I didn't even flinch, because pain had already claimed everything else. And as I walked home, shivering, one question echoed in my head. What's left of a person when love is gone? That night, I sat on a park bench under a broken streetlight. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt gray. My hands trembled as I held the last photo of us, the paper soft and wet from my tears. Then, a voice broke the silence. "You look like someone who's lost something, or maybe found the truth," said an older woman sitting beside me. Her coat was worn, her eyes calm, like she had already lived every kind of heartbreak. "I lost everything," I whispered. She smiled faintly. "Then you're free to build anything." Her words stayed with me long after she walked away into the fog. Maybe she was a stranger. Or maybe she was fate, reminding me that endings are just disguised beginnings. But as thunder rolled again in the distance, I wondered, was I strong enough to rise from this, or was I already too far gone? Morning. Light crept through the curtains, soft and hesitant, like even the sun wasn't sure it was welcome. I hadn't slept, but something in me felt different that day. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was that woman's voice echoing in my mind. "You're free to build anything." I got out of bed and looked at the mess around me. Empty cups, unopened letters, pieces of a life I had stopped living. I started cleaning, one corner then another. Each piece of dust I wiped away felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The quiet wasn't cruel anymore. It was peaceful, almost sacred. And as I stood before the mirror, pale and fragile but still standing, I whispered, maybe I'm not done yet, but could I really rebuild from nothing? I began searching for work again, anything to keep me moving. The first few interviews were humiliating, polite rejections, forced smiles. But one day, a small local design firm took a chance on me. It wasn't much, but it was a door. The first time I received my paycheck, I held it for a long moment, my fingers trembling. It wasn't about the money. It was proof that I could survive, that I didn't need him. At night, I'd sit by the window, designing ideas, sketching dreams I never had time for before. The silence that once suffocated me now helped me think. It was small, but a spark doesn't need to be big to start a fire. Still deep down, a shadow whispered, if I rise, will he ever see what he threw away? One evening, I found his old shirt tucked away in the closet, the one he wore the night he left. I held it for a moment, then took it to the balcony and set it on fire. The fabric curled, blackened, and vanished into smoke. Watching it burn didn't make me cry. It made me breathe again. That night, I made a silent promise. I will never beg for love again. I will never let someone else define my worth. And as the last ember faded into the wind, I felt something awaken inside me. Something fierce, unbreakable. The girl he left was gone. What rose in her place was someone he would never recognize. But power has a price, and I was about to learn mine. The office was small, flickering lights, chipped desks, and the hum of overworked computers. But to me, it felt like the beginning of something vast. I threw myself into the work, designing late into the night, eyes burning, heart steady. Every project became a quiet war, a battle against my past, against weakness, against him. My boss started noticing. "You've got fire," he said once, glancing at my sketches. I smiled faintly, hiding the truth, that the fire came from heartbreak, not talent. At night, I'd look at the city lights and whisper, "You left me to chase money." But watch me earn it myself. The world didn't believe in me yet, but I could feel it, the shift, like thunder before the storm. As months passed, I met people who saw me, not as broken, but as becoming. One of them was Daniel, a quiet investor with sharp eyes and a steady calm. He believed in potential, not pity. "You've got something rare," he said. "Vision." Pain sharpens it. We started working together, small deals at first, late nights, long talks, risks that made my hands shake. But every success, every small victory stitched my soul back together. Yet sometimes, in quiet moments, I'd still think of him. Was he happy? Was she everything he traded me for? The thought didn't hurt anymore. It just pushed me harder. Because nothing builds faster than the hunger to prove someone wrong. Still, I wondered, how far could I go before I became unrecognizable even to myself? One weekend, while cleaning the apartment, I found the bracelet he had gifted me. Silver, delicate, engraved with forever. I stared at it for a long time, memories flickering like ghosts. Then, without hesitation, I walked to a pawn shop and sold it. The money wasn't much, barely enough to buy a new laptop. But when I powered that laptop on, it felt like plugging into a new life. I poured my energy into creating a business plan, a vision board, a name. Ava Designs. My designs, my story, my future. For the first time, my dreams didn't have his face in them. They had mine, and as I hit submit on the registration form that night, I felt the spark inside me burst into flame. But I didn't know then. Success has its own kind of danger. And mine was about to call him back into my life. Success didn't come with a bang. It came with exhaustion. Days turned into nights as I sketched, designed, and pitched until my voice broke. There were moments I wanted to quit, moments when the world seemed deaf to ambition that came from a woman like me, heartbroken, unknown, unprotected. But failure had already broken me once. I had no fear left to lose. Then, one afternoon, a company placed its first major order. Just a few hundred units, but it was everything. I stared at the confirmation email through tear-filled eyes. I had done it. Without him. Without anyone saving me. As I stood by the window, city lights glowing below, I whispered, "You traded love for money." I turned love into it. But even in victory, I felt the air shift, as if fate was watching, waiting for the next move. Ava Designs began to grow faster than I could breathe. My designs caught attention online. Articles, interviews, praise that felt both thrilling and strange. Orders poured in. My phone never stopped buzzing. I was living the dream, or at least the version of it I could afford. But with every handshake came envy. With every smile came a whisper. Some said I had a secret investor. Some said I must have slept my way to success. I ignored them. Let them talk. Because the noise was proof. I was finally being seen. Daniel became my closest ally, guiding me through deals and contracts. "You're building something bigger than money," he said once. "You're building power." I didn't tell him that part of me still wanted one pair of eyes to notice, the ones that had once looked at me with love and now probably never thought of me at all. Or did they? Months later, my company was invited to a luxury business showcase, the kind of event I once used to dream of attending, dressed in borrowed confidence. Now, I walked in wearing my own designs, head high, name on the banners. The cameras flashed, the crowd murmured, and for the first time, I felt what real control tasted like. Calm, electric, divine. Investors lined up. Reporters asked about my story. I gave them the polished version. Hard work, resilience, passion. But the real story, the one that began with betrayal and fire, stayed locked behind my smile. That night, as I returned home and placed the award on my shelf, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. A simple message blinked on the screen. "Congratulations, Ava. You've come a long way." And my heart froze, because I knew that voice, even in text. He was watching. The message haunted me all night. That name, that ghost from my past, it carried the chill of everything I thought I'd buried. I didn't reply. I couldn't, but I couldn't stop thinking either. The next morning, over coffee, I opened my laptop and searched his name. What I found stopped my breath. Headlines filled the screen. "Businessman faces financial scandal. Lavish lifestyle under investigation." His face stared back at me, older, tired, eyes heavy with regret and sleepless guilt. The woman he'd left me for stood beside him in one photo, her perfect smile replaced with something hollow. I closed the laptop slowly, my reflection staring back in the dark glass. I should have felt joy, but all I felt was a strange, quiet sadness. Had karma arrived, or had he simply destroyed himself? Days later, the whispers turned into storms. The woman, the one who glittered like gold, was gone. Rumors said she had drained his accounts and vanished overseas. He was left drowning in debt, his so-called friends disappearing one by one. I scrolled through the photos of their mansion. Empty halls, furniture covered in sheets, memories turned into ruins. The same world he had chosen over me had now spat him out without mercy. Daniel noticed my silence at work. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded faintly. "Just remembering something that doesn't matter anymore." But deep inside, I could hear the echo of that night, his voice saying, "She can give me what you can't." And I smiled, just slightly, whispering to myself, I guess she did. Still, the question lingered. Would he dare come back now? Weeks passed. I buried myself in work again, refusing to feed the ghost of curiosity. But late one evening, as rain drummed softly against the window, I received another message. This time it wasn't congratulatory, it was a simple sentence. I made a mistake. No name. No number I recognized. But I didn't need to. I could almost hear his voice, broken, desperate, stripped of pride. For a long moment I just stared at the message, the glow of the screen lighting my face in the dark. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. Then I locked the phone and placed it face down on the table. Outside, lightning flashed, bright and sudden. Inside, I smiled to myself, a calm, dangerous smile, because this time, the silence would be my revenge. A week after that message, I found something strange waiting at my office desk. An envelope, cream-colored, heavy, with no name on the front. Just a faint scent of old cologne that made my stomach twist with memory. Inside was a single card, Charity Gala, hosted by D. Collins Group. I froze. That was his name, his company. At the bottom, scribbled in a shaky hand, were 5 words that made my chest tighten. I'd like to see you again. For a long time, I stared at those words, my mind torn between curiosity and fury. He wanted to see me, after everything. After choosing wealth, after watching me vanish from his world, I whispered to myself, "You don't deserve this version of me." But deep down, I already knew I was going. Not for him, but for closure. The night of the gala shimmered with luxury, chandeliers, laughter, the smell of expensive perfume. I arrived in a black silk gown, my hair tied back, confidence sharp as a blade. People turned when I entered, some recognizing me from the company headlines, and then I saw him. Standing alone near the bar, his suit slightly wrinkled, his smile forced, a ghost of the man who once broke me. His eyes widened when he saw me. He whispered my name almost in disbelief. "You came." I smiled politely, tilting my head. "You invited me." The air between us was heavy, a silent war of past and present. And for the first time I realized something. I no longer trembled in his presence. He did. We spoke quietly in a corner, away from the golden light. He looked at me with eyes full of regret. "Everything fell apart," he said softly. "She left." "The money's gone. I lost everything." I sipped my champagne, the glass trembling slightly, but my voice didn't. "No, you didn't lose it, Alex. You traded it." He swallowed hard, shame thick in his throat. I was stupid. "You were the only real thing I ever had." For a moment, his voice cracked. The man who once looked down on me was now begging for forgiveness. The music swelled around us, violins, laughter, and the faint sound of glasses clinking. I leaned closer and whispered, "You made your choice, and so did I." Then I walked away, leaving him standing there under the crystal light, surrounded by people, yet utterly alone. As I stepped outside into the cool night, the sound of rain began to fall softly. It was the same rain that once made me cry. But tonight it felt like applause. Still, one thought lingered in my mind. Was this truly the end? Or just the calm before the final storm? It didn't end that night. 2 days later, I saw his name light up on my phone again. This time with a call, not a message. I hesitated, staring at it, feeling that old pull in my chest. Then, against my better judgment, I answered. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. "Seeing you, it reminded me who I was before everything went wrong." I didn't respond, just listened to his voice. Older now, fragile. Then came the real reason. "I want to talk, in private. There's something I can offer you." The tone of his words wasn't regret anymore. It was businesslike, almost rehearsed. And though curiosity whispered in my ear, something deep in my gut told me this wasn't about closure anymore. Still, I agreed to meet him. Because sometimes the only way to end the past is to face it one last time. We met at a quiet restaurant on the edge of town. Rain streaked down the window beside us, and the low hum of jazz filled the air. He looked worn out, dark circles under his eyes, his once proud suit slightly faded. "I have investors waiting," he said, leaning in. "I can rebuild everything, but I need someone I can trust." "Someone like you." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "You don't need me, Alex. You need my reputation." His jaw tightened. "You owe me at least a chance to make things right." The word "owe" hit me like a slap. I placed my napkin on the table and stood up. "I don't owe you anything." He reached for my hand, his grip cold. "Please, just hear me out." Something in his tone, desperation mixed with something darker, made me freeze. I pulled my hand free, my voice steady but cold. "You can't buy forgiveness." Outside, thunder cracked. And for the first time, I saw what lay behind his eyes. Not guilt, but fear. That night I couldn't sleep. His words replayed in my head like static. "I can rebuild everything." It wasn't about us. It never was. He wanted access to my company, my contacts, my success. The next morning, Daniel called. "You okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. I told him everything. The calls, the meeting, the strange offer. Daniel's tone changed. "You think he's in trouble?" I hesitated. "No," I said slowly. "I think he's dangerous." When I arrived at work later that day, a single envelope was waiting on my desk. No sender, just my name written in a familiar, trembling hand. Inside was a photo. It was me, taken from across the street, the night of the gala. The rain outside began to fall harder, and my heart whispered a truth I didn't want to believe. The past wasn't over. It had found me again. The moment I saw that photo, my blood ran cold. It was taken from a distance. Grainy, but clear enough to see the outline of my face, my dress, even the exact moment I stepped into my car that night. The envelope had no note, no clue, no explanation, but deep down, I already knew who sent it. My hands trembled as I turned the photo over. On the back, in tiny handwriting, were 3 words. "We're not done." The office suddenly felt too quiet. The hum of the air conditioner, the ticking clock, every sound sharper than before. I checked the window. Then the hallway, empty. A cold sweat crept up my neck as I whispered to myself, "He's watching me." For the first time in years, I felt truly unsafe. That night I drove home slowly, my headlights cutting through the dark rain. Every car behind me felt like a threat. When I reached my apartment building, I hesitated before stepping out, scanning the shadows, half expecting him to appear. Inside, I locked every door and drew the curtains tight. My phone buzzed again, another message, this time from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have walked away from me." My heart pounded so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. I dropped the phone and backed away. The memory of his cold hand at the restaurant replayed in my mind. The way his eyes had looked almost unhinged. The silence of the apartment grew heavier, pressing down on me like a weight. Outside, lightning flashed, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a silhouette near the gate. But when I blinked, it was gone. The next morning, I went straight to the police. They listened carefully, jotting notes as I explained everything, the messages, the photo, the threats. But when I showed them the envelope, the officer sighed softly. "Without proof it's him, there's not much we can do," he said. His words made my stomach sink. Proof? What more did they need? Blood. As I left the station, I caught my reflection in the glass door, pale, tired, eyes burning with both fear and fury. Back at home, Daniel called again. "You're scaring me, Emma," he said. "Maybe you should stay somewhere else for a few days." I almost agreed. But then I looked around at my apartment, my place, my safety, and shook my head. No, I won't run from him again. Still that night, as the rain whispered against the window, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there he was smiling. It started just after midnight. A faint scraping sound, soft at first, like someone dragging metal across the floor. I froze in bed, eyes wide open, my heart hammering in the dark. I told myself it was nothing, the pipes, the wind, a trick of the night. But then I heard it again. Closer this time. The sound of a door handle rattling. My throat went dry. I slipped quietly out of bed, every step silent on the wooden floor. The apartment was dim, the moonlight spilling weakly through the curtains, outlining the furniture in cold blue light. Then came the creak of the front door. Someone was inside. I ducked behind the kitchen counter, my breath trembling as I reached for my phone. No signal. My hand shook as I dialed again, whispering to myself, "Come on. Come on!" A floorboard creaked near the hallway. I peeked over the counter, just enough to see a shadow move across the living room. Tall, broad-shouldered, deliberate. Every instinct screamed run, but my body refused to move. The shadow paused near my study door, then turned slightly, like it was listening. That's when the lightning flashed through the window, and for a split second, I saw his face, Alex. His expression wasn't sorrow or regret anymore. It was something darker, something empty. I ducked back down, covering my mouth to stop a scream. How long had he been watching me? How long had he been planning this? The sound of footsteps came closer, slow, measured, almost calm. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a heavy glass vase, and gripped it tight. When he stepped into the kitchen doorway, I swung with everything I had. The vase shattered against his shoulder, and he stumbled back, cursing in pain. That split second was enough. I ran. Out the door, down the stairs, barefoot, rain soaking my hair and clothes. I didn't stop until I reached the street, gasping under a flickering streetlight. Behind me, my apartment window glowed faintly, the curtain moving like a ghost in the night. I called the police again, this time with no hesitation, my voice shaking. When they arrived, the apartment was empty. The lock was broken, but no one was there. Only one thing lay on the kitchen floor. A photo. The same one he'd sent before, but this time there was a message scrawled across it in red ink. "You can't hide behind money." And in that moment, I knew he wasn't just angry. He wanted to destroy everything I'd built. 3 days passed in silence. I stayed in a hotel under a different name, trying to breathe, trying to feel safe. But safety was a word that meant nothing anymore. Every shadow felt familiar. Every sound made me flinch. Then one morning my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, until a voice whispered, "We need to finish this." It was him, calm, cold. "I just want to talk," he said. "No police, no running. Just you and me." My hand shook as I gripped the phone tighter. "You broke into my home," I said. "You threatened me." "I just wanted you to listen," he replied, his tone suddenly desperate. "Please, one last time." My pulse thudded in my ears. I should have hung up. But some part of me, the part that needed closure, whispered, "End it now." So I agreed. We met at the old pier, the same one where he once promised we'd build a life together. The night air was heavy with salt and fog, the sea whispering softly against the wooden planks. A single lamppost flickered weakly above us. He stood there, soaked from the rain, his hair plastered to his face. When he saw me, a faint, broken smile crossed his lips. "You came," he said. I stopped several feet away, my hands trembling. What do you want, Alex? He laughed softly, almost sadly. You think you won? You think money makes you safe? I didn't win, I said quietly. I just survived what you left me with. His eyes glistened with something wild. Anger, regret, maybe both. You became everything I dreamed of, he said, stepping closer. But you forgot me. I took a step back, feeling the edge of the pier behind me. No, I whispered. You forgot yourself. The wind howled as thunder rumbled over the sea. He paced, breathing hard. She left me with nothing. The money, the company, all gone. I thought if I found you, maybe I could fix it. Maybe you'd still care. His words cracked like broken glass. You don't love me, I said. You love control. You always did. He stopped, eyes burning with tears and rage. You owe me, he shouted. I stepped closer, my voice cold as steel. I owed you nothing. You chose greed over love, and this is your punishment. For a moment, everything went silent. Just rain, wind, and his breathing. Then slowly, his face softened. He looked down, shaking his head. I never thought you'd be stronger than me. I had to be, I whispered. He took one last step forward, as if to reach for me, but his foot slipped on the wet boards. I reached out instinctively, but it was too late. His hand missed mine, and he fell backward into the dark water below. The splash echoed into the night, then vanished into silence. I stood there trembling, staring into the black waves where he had disappeared. The rain washing down my face like tears I didn't know I still had. And in that endless sound of rain and sea, I realized the past had finally drowned itself. The next morning, the pier was sealed off with yellow tape. Police cars lined the shore, lights flashing against the gray sky. Divers searched the water for hours, but they found nothing. No body, no trace. Just the sound of waves swallowing secrets. They asked me the same questions again and again. What happened? Did he fall? Did you push him? My voice never changed. Calm, steady, empty. He slipped, I said. It was an accident. The detective studying me finally nodded, though his eyes lingered a little too long. Sometimes, he said quietly, people like him don't want to be found. I didn't answer. I just turned my gaze toward the sea, endless, dark, and still. It had taken him once. Maybe this time it decided to keep him. Days turned into weeks. The news headlines vanished, and life slowly pretended to move on. But I didn't. His shadow still lived in corners, in reflections, in rain, in the faint echo of footsteps behind me that always turned out to be my own. At night, I dreamed of water, black, cold, endless, and a hand reaching out from beneath the surface. Sometimes I woke up gasping, unsure if I'd really left that pier or if I was still standing there, frozen in that moment. Daniel tried to help. You did what you had to, he said softly. But how could I explain the feeling that justice never really feels clean? That even when you win, a part of you still bleeds? The silence became my new punishment, and maybe, in some way, my peace. I went back to work eventually. The company ran smoothly, the investors smiled, and the world called me resilient. But I no longer chased success the same way. Money, power, and they didn't glitter anymore. They just reminded me how much they could destroy. Sometimes, when I left the office late, I'd pass the reflection of the city lights on wet streets. It looked like the sea, deep, shifting, alive. And every time, I'd feel that same shiver down my spine, wondering if somewhere, somehow, he was still out there. One evening, as I locked up my office, I found a small envelope on my desk. No name, no handwriting. Just a folded piece of paper inside. 3 words. Still watching you? My hands froze. My breath caught. And in that instant, I realized, maybe the past doesn't drown. Maybe it learns to swim. A few days after the note appeared, I got a call. Detective Harris, the same man who had questioned me after the pier incident. His voice sounded heavy, careful. Miss Carter, he said, we found something you should see. My stomach nodded instantly. You found him? There was a pause. Then, softly, something like that. When I arrived at the station, he slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs, waterlogged papers, fragments of ID, and one personal item, a wristwatch. The same one Alex used to wear, engraved on the back with my initials. He wasn't far from the pier, Harris said. But that's not the strange part. He leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. His car was parked near your apartment the night before he fell. Inside, we found an envelope, full of photos of you. Dozens of them. I stared at the pictures in silence, my heart pounding like thunder. Every fear I'd had was real. He had been following me, watching me, planning something. But what chilled me most was the final photo in the stack. It wasn't taken by him. It was of him standing outside my building with someone else behind the camera. That photo didn't make sense. The angle, the distance, it meant someone else had been there that night. Someone watching both of us. Do you recognize this person? Harris asked, pointing to the blurred figure beside him. I shook my head slowly, though something about the posture felt familiar. He continued, We're checking CCTV, but whoever it is, they've covered their tracks well. That night, back in my apartment, I sat in darkness staring at that photo for hours. It felt like looking at a ghost inside another ghost, layers of secrets wrapped in silence. Then, my phone buzzed. A new message. No number, no name. Just 3 words again. He wasn't alone. I froze, every light in the room suddenly feeling too dim, every sound too loud. Because for the first time, I understood. Alex wasn't the only one obsessed with me. Rain poured outside again that night, heavy, relentless, like the sky was purging everything left unsaid. I locked the doors, checked the windows, and told myself it was over. That it had to be. Then came the knock. Soft, measured, familiar. My chest tightened. I walked slowly to the door, heart pounding. Who is it? I whispered. Silence, another knock. Louder this time. I peered through the peephole and saw no one. Just the empty hallway, glistening with water from the storm. I opened the door cautiously. Nothing there. But at my feet lay another envelope. Inside, a single photo. It was me, asleep in bed, taken just hours before. Lightning flashed through the window and the photo slipped from my shaking hands. Because now I knew. The story wasn't about him anymore. Someone else had taken his place, and they were closer than I ever imagined. Some stories end with forgiveness. Mine ended with silence, the kind that speaks louder than any apology. He chased gold and lost his soul. I chased purpose and found myself. It wasn't the money that changed me. It was the moment I stopped waiting for him to return. Love once blinded me, but pain taught me how to see. Now, when people say success is the best revenge, I just smile. Because true revenge isn't wealth or fame. It's peace, and peace is priceless.